Nope, that's not what he said. It wasn't really close. Jeez, God, I should have started drinking. I really should have. Just to get through this one fucking email that I'm trying to read.
Welcome to Damn It, Jim, the podcast. My name is Dana Smith. I'm the captain of this adventure. And as always, I'm joined by our favorite vice admiral of obsessive ranting, Dan Calzaretta. Good evening, Dan. How are you tonight?
I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I never rant about anything, Dana. But I'm going to start ranting right now about you saying that I rant. Because I don't rant. I really don't rant.
Whom are you talking about? I'm sorry.
Nope. Not going to take that bait. No, sir. No. No, I'm doing well, Dana. How are you doing?
Good.
Survived the 4th of July, it looks like. Now, I don't see any burn marks.
Got all my appendages.
Good.
And didn't set off. I've not set off a firework in I don't know how long. It's been years.
Yeah.
But we saw at least 3, if not 4, shows going on. I had lots to see.
Well, we only had 3 house fires due to fireworks. They weren't actually the houses; they were the garbage cans. So I don't understand why. Not me. Like not my house, but I'm talking all of my town of Walla Walla. The fire department actually prints the statistics, and they'll say and it goes back 20 years probably. This year there were just like 3 or 4 garbage can fires. So at least people were cleaning up their mess. But people, make sure the freaking firework is out before you put it in a garbage can. My God, how stupid can you be? Wait, is that a rant? Am I ranting?
Yeah, I don't know how many, but I saw that our town responded to several house fires.
Yeah.
Caused by fireworks. And it's fine with me if it's the person setting off the fireworks and it's their house, but if it's like the neighbor's house, then that really sucks.
Yeah, that would suck. Yeah, I agree.
We survived.
Good.
And your dog did okay?
Yeah, dog did okay. I think he did. I took his medication for him. So I was feeling good. I think he was okay.
So, Dan, get into the listener comments we had on Facebook. We got a message from Roxy Ray. She's been listening to us for a while. She says, okay, I've listened to this podcast. I enjoyed it. Y'all are as food obsessed as I am. She says, I didn't think that was possible. Dan, we talk about food quite a bit on this podcast. So
last week was pizza, as I recall.
Yeah. She says, if you ever visit Sanford, North Carolina, you must visit Hawkins Avenue Grill. They have a 3-foot wide pizza.
What? Are you sure you're reading that right, Dana?
That's what it says.
Wow.
She says it's pretty darn good, too. Maybe she can send us a picture of that. I'd like to see that.
That would be cool. Yeah, Roxy, take a picture and send it to us.
Alan Bowie said, great podcast. Keep a dead crewman count for the movies. Says, love listening to your take on things Star Trek. Thank you, Alan.
Alan, it's a good idea. If you have a way to make those counts, do it and send them to us. That would be fantastic.
Stephen Michael Nant said, it's been a while since I was on the channel, but they have a really fun channel. I think he's talking about our podcast.
I hope so. I didn't know we had a channel. I mean, that's funny. Okay.
So Joey Corson said, I'm glad you guys decided to review the movies. It's a slow burn with a damp fuse. The plot of V'ger is supersized derivative of the Nomad from season 2, The Changeling. This is not a great sci-fi movie, never mind comparing it to other Trek movies, but you couldn't have convinced me and my mom of the millions of Trek fans that have flocked to the theaters. It says, we were awestruck by the special effects and the long tour of the redesigned ship and overjoyed to see the original crew back together. And finally, Dan, on Facebook, we got another message from our good friend and game maker, Pam McClung. She said, great podcast episode. She says, I also thought Aaliyah's outfit, once she'd been taken over by V'ger, was a weird choice. And that wasn't what she was wearing when they took her.
Oh, good point.
I also thought the high heels was strange. Who pops out of the shower and has high heels on?
I've seen movies like that, though.
Yeah, I've seen movies where they wear high heels in the shower all the time. Okay, Dan, so that's what we got through Facebook this week. What messages did you get, Dan?
Dana, we did get some YouTube messages and email. From YouTube, our longtime listener, Olaf Olafsson, commented about our encore episode, The Omega Glory. He wrote about how the same guest actors were often used in different episodes, but as different characters. He mentioned how Morgan Woodward played both Captain Tracy in the Omega Glory and Dr. Van Gelder in Dagger of the Mind, for example, and how Ian Wolfe played Septimus in Bread and Circuses and Mr. Atoz in All Our Yesterdays. However, Olaf wonders why we never see Biff Elliott, who played Schmitter in more than one episode.
He was such a good actor, too.
So good. He was so good. He should have just been Schmitter many times.
Yeah, I mean, they brought back other characters that were killed off on the Enterprise.
Yeah, we scraped him up. We fixed him up. No problem.
Yeah, gave him a little hydration. That's all he needed. Yeah.
That's right. Also, Dave Rutan sent an email about Star Trek the Motion Picture. He asked, "Are you sure the title of the film isn't Star Trek Whom Motion Picture?" See, Dana, you've got our listeners trying to get me to go off on the whole who versus whom thing.
It's nothing to do with me.
Well, you just did it like 2 minutes ago, Dana. So yeah,
But
it does.
he didn't hear me.
Oh, wait, that's true. He could have heard you unless he went into the future and then. But I'm just not going to take the bait.
Okay.
By the way, did I tell you how much of a douchebag that English professor is? I bet he's not even a freaking English professor, Dana. Finally, Dana, we received an email from Anthony Seclair about our review of Star Trek the Motion Picture. He writes, "One of the highlights of your podcast is the ability to turn even the lamest episode into a fun review, and Star Trek the Motion Picture is no exception. I spent $3.99 and 2 hours of my life, which I'll never get back, to stream it on Amazon in preparation for your podcast." Anthony, I think it was more than 2 hours, probably. I know it felt like more than 2 hours. Anyway, he goes on. "You hit the nail on the head with the endless, tedious long shots as they wallowed in their special effects." He finishes up, Dana, by saying, "I know that the next podcast..." Nope, that's not what he said. That wasn't really close. Jeez, God. I should have started drinking. I really should have. I thought about it just to get through this one fucking email that I'm trying to read. He finishes, Dana, the email by saying, "I know that for the next podcast, my money will be well spent rewatching The Wrath of Khan. Till then, keep up the good work." Thanks for that email, Anthony.
Yeah, that was awesome. I really appreciate it.
Now, Dana, before we jump in, though, to the review of Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, I do have to say we have reached over 40,000 downloads of our podcast.
Wow.
Now, I don't really know what that means, but 40,000 seems like a lot to me.
I mean, I was happy when we got 10. I mean 10, not 10,000.
Just one interesting thing. On YouTube, you can see the number of views that each of our podcast videos has gotten. Can you guess, Dana, which episode has had the most views?
The one where you misspelled whom the gods or whatever it was. That's probably got the most.
No, that's not. It was season 2, episode 12, The Deadly Years. There's been almost 6,000 views of that one podcast.
Wow.
Isn't that weird? Anyway, that's all I got, Dana.
So, Dan, before we get started,
Yeah.
I was at the grocery store today. We had a whole thing about Pop-Tarts before.
Oh, yeah.
They now have frosted banana bread Pop-Tarts, Apple Jacks Pop-Tarts, strawberry milkshake Pop-Tarts,
I don't know about that.
chocolatey chip pancake Pop-Tarts.
Now, did you take a picture of the shelves after you cleared the entire stock of Pop-Tarts into your grocery cart? I'm just surprised that your wife let you in the house with all those Pop-Tarts, unless you have like a hidey hole in the backyard, this little secret cave where you hide all your Pop-Tarts.
I have a empty file cabinet at work that's full of, well, it's not empty anymore because it's full of Pop-Tarts.
Your wife listens to the podcast, so I'm leaving that in. Unless I get a Venmo in the amount of $500. This podcast is being brought to you by North Shore Adult Diapers. North Shore offers reassuringly strong protection for even the heaviest control problems and can keep you dry and confident for up to 12 hours, so you can live your life with freedom and dignity.
Whether you are attending a baseball game, having dinner with friends, getting on a plane, or just sitting back listening to the Damn It Jim podcast, the last thing you want to worry about is incontinence. Don't be trapped at home. Be secure in knowing that North Shore has you covered with a true quality product.
You can even put North Shore's products to the test by requesting up to 6 product samples. And Dana, our listeners can use the code KIRK at checkout to receive $10 off their next order over $50. Go to northshore.com today to place your order or request product samples. This offer can be used only once per customer and may not be combined with other offers.
This week, it's Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Okay, Dan, we start off with the crew of the Enterprise, and it's we see sitting in the command chair is a female Vulcan, and she talks about approaching the neutral zone, and we see that McCoy is on the bridge even. Sulu's at the station, Uhura's at her station.
But no Chekhov.
No Chekhov. He get a distress call from a ship called the Kobayashi Maru. Savick, who's the one sitting in the command chair, gives the order to enter the neutral zone. And everybody kind of gives her a look. And the Klingon ships approach and fire upon the Enterprise. Explosions go off, and the crew appears to be killed. You see, like, everybody flying.
Yeah, it looks like Spock's dead. It looks like McCoy is dead, right?
Yeah. I mean, McCoy was one of the first to go. So
yeah, which, I can understand why.
Yeah, it's like rig the explosives for real under this is where McCoy's gonna be standing. So.
Yeah, like that guy in the one episode that got actually blown up by some,
yeah.
Explosive.
Then there's like this kind of chatter we hear in the background, and one of the walls opens up, and we hear Captain Kirk say, "That's enough," and we realize it was a training exercise.
God, Dana, this was a great way to open this movie. I thought it was fantastic. I told you last week, I haven't seen these movies since I saw them in the theater. I forgot. I mean, once I heard Kobayashi Maru, then I understood. But man, what a great opening to this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it being really shocking when you saw it. You're kind of like, what? This got to be like a dream or something,
Right.
Savick goes to Kirk and says, it wasn't fair. This was a no-win situation. And Kirk says, a no-win situation is something everyone might face. He says, how we deal with death is at least as important as how we deal with life, wouldn't you say? Then Savick says, as I indicated, Admiral, the thought had not occurred to me. And Kirk says, well, now you have something new to think about.
Kind of a smart-ass comment, but good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so McCoy asks if it would be easier to put an experienced crew on the Enterprise, and Kirk replies, galloping around the cosmos is a game for the young. So then we learn it's Kirk's birthday as he encounters Spock, and Spock has given him an antique. It's the book, A Tale of Two Cities.
Did you ever read that, by the way, Dana, in high school?
I've not.
Were you supposed to read it?
Maybe.
I read the Cliff Notes.
So we see Kirk, he's like extending his arms. And if you're over 45, at least you know what this is about. And he kept like trying to read it. And he says, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. And he says, a message, Spock? And Spock says, no, none that I can think of.
But Dana, let me jump in here. Let me jump in here for a second. This scene between these two is so much better than any scene between the two of them since sometime during the series. I mean, I felt from the very beginning of this movie that they really cared about each other. They had a long history together. I just thought it was super well done.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely a connection there.
Dana, I forgot to bring this up. While Spock and Kirk were talking about the Kobayashi Maru test, they walk out of the simulation room. There's a guy cleaning the carpets. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did. I thought you'd be happy to see that.
It was great. Now, why don't they beam that guy up to the Enterprise? I know they refurbished it, but the carpets are still going to be nasty on the Enterprise.
Especially after Kirk gets back in the captain's chair, there's going to be a mess someplace. Yeah. So later, in Kirk's apartment, McCoy comes to his apartment and gives Kirk some Romulan ale. And then, he hands Kirk another package and says, happy birthday. And Kirk's like, what's this? And opens it up, and it's a pair of reading glasses.
Which then McCoy says are antiques. They're like 300 years old, he said.
Yeah. So it must have been hard to go through all those antiques to find one that was just his prescription.
I didn't even think about that. God, that's so true. But here's the thing. McCoy says, I would give you this medication and it would fix your eyes, but you're allergic to it, right?
Yeah.
Don't they have freaking LASIK in the 23rd century, Dana? I mean...
Well, the medication has apparently taken place of the of LASIK, and so they probably don't do it anymore.
Well, I would think they would still have an option if you're allergic. It seems to me. You had LASIK done, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it scary? Then like sticking some knife laser thing right in your eyeball? I mean, it seems like it'd be scary to me.
It was kind of fascinating. You see the laser right over your eye, and it's going making these little noises and stuff.
No, Dana, no.
They peel back, they cut your cornea and pulled it back, and everything just kind of goes, what little acuity you had, all of a sudden is just complete blur. And you're like, God, I hope they can put that back. I hope they can put that back.
Dana, they'd have to strap me down to the table, staple my head so it couldn't move. I mean, I just would be like, no, let me go.
I was wrong. I don't want to do it.
Were you like strapped down?
They strap your head in and stuff to keep you from moving.
What about your arms? Because I'd be like flailing, trying to punch the fucking doctor.
Well, then, so you go through all this, and then they put the cornea back.
Yeah.
And they use like a little swab to like kind of smooth everything out. Before I sat down, there was a clock on the wall that was like 6 feet away.
Yeah.
He asked me to look at that clock before everything started and said, how's that look? I said, blurry.
Mm-hmm.
He said, can you tell what time it is?
It's time for me to get up and get out. That's what time it is.
It was one of those big round clocks that you hang on walls, like which was in schools when we were kids.
Yeah.
And so when it's all done, they sit you up in the chair and say, look at the clock. And the clock was like crystal clear.
Now, Dana, did you ever consider that they had a lens on the clock that made it look blurry when they started, and then just switched it when when the freaking laser was jabbing itself into your eye, which, by the way, is not far from the brain. I just want to remind people of this. Maybe that's why Kirk didn't have it done. He's just like, I'm not letting this guy stick a laser in my eyeball.
Maybe that's it, Dan.
Was that a ramble? It probably was a ramble.
I think it was a ramble.
Yeah, I better put money in the jar, Dana.
Thank you, Dan. Kirk just seems unhappy. And McCoy says, damn it, Jim. What's wrong with you? We should be celebrating your birthday, not acting like it's a goddamn funeral.
Wow, some swearing going on. Now that's the only time, Dana, that we hear the phrase damn it, Jim?
I think so.
I think so, too. Yeah.
McCoy says, get back your command before you really do grow old. So next we see the Reliant, and when we hear Chekhov's voice, and they're looking for a lifeless planet. Chekhov and Captain Terrell call Dr. Marcus in a space station, and they inform them that they have found a planet where they might be able to transplant a life form. There's this like other younger guy there with kind of blonde curly hair, and he looks like he's about ready to like piss himself. He just doesn't look happy at all. And I was thinking if he was wearing North Shore diapers, he wouldn't have that look on his face.
Yeah, exactly right.
And she finally says, well, just check out the planet and let me know what you find. Next thing we see is this blonde-haired guy, David, and Dr. Marcus walking along the corridor. We get the idea that this Genesis project they're talking about can be very dangerous in the wrong hands.
Mm-hmm.
David asks about the Boy Scout she used to hang out with, and Dr. Carol Marcus laughs, and she says, Jim Kirk was a lot of things, but he was never a Boy Scout. I love that line.
Yeah.
I mean, it tells they had a relationship. That's where David came from. Yeah, so it's all pretty clear.
He's just the first of many, though, Dana.
Yeah. Next thing we see is Chekhov and Terrell beamed down to the planet.
And Terrell was the captain of the Reliant, is that right?
Yeah, he was the captain. Yep. Anyways, it's a giant dust storm. I mean, you can barely see either one of these guys. It's like the dust is blowing. It looks terrible.
Yeah.
And Chekhov says, this is City Alpha 6.
That was great. That was really, really good.
They come walking around, they see these cargo containers, and so then they go inside, and it looks like someone is living there.
Yeah.
Chekhov sees books on the shelf. You got Moby Dick and King Lear and all this stuff.
Milton, Paradise Lost was there as well. That's an important clue.
Chekhov sees it's like a seatbelt or a cargo strap.
Yeah.
And on it it the SS Botany Bay.
Oh, crap.
And so Chekhov's like, we got to get out of here.
We've got to get the fuck out of here. Wait, that was
That's German. Yeah.
German and French, or I don't know. Let me see if I can do it. Let me see if I can do it. My name is Chekhov. I'm from Russia. We got to get the fuck out of here. God, no, I can't. How would they say the? Dana, I used to speak some German. Not German, Russian. I never spoke German. See, I am not under the influence of anything tonight, Dana, and I don't know what's happening.
We got to get the fuck out of here.
Oh, that's it. That was really good. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm here for you, Dan.
They also have a term "pashol nach," which means hop on, and then which means your mother.
Wow.
Yeah, none of that can go in.
Unless we're teaching people Russian. Yeah. So.
Welcome to Duolingo. Duodingo. It's the Australian version of that app. Welcome to Duodingo, matey. That's a pirate.
The dingo ate your baby.
The dingo ate my baby. So, okay, here's what they're already learning on Duolingo. They're learning like Russian, some German that apparently I can speak, and they're learning Australian from you.
Oh my God.
Okay. Oh God.
Oh wow. So Chekhov.
It's so hard to get back on track sometimes, isn't it, Dana?
Yeah, so Chekhov and Terrell put their helmets on and they run outside, and they're just a few feet away. There's like several people waiting for them.
Yeah.
So then we cut back inside of these cargo containers. All these guys are standing around. They've taken their masks off. Then the last guy unwraps a cloak around his face and pulls this mask off, and it's Khan.
It was a great reveal, though, Dana, the way that they did it.
Yeah, it really was. But you look around the room, and other than Khan, everybody else looks like they're from an 80s rock band. You know, they got kind of the wild hair. One of the guys has got like a band in his hair.
Yeah. Looked like Bon Jovi and his band wandered onto the set or something.
Yeah. And he says it's been 15 years since Captain Kirk marooned me. Chekhov says, no, Captain Kirk put you on SETI Alpha 5. And Khan explodes and says, this is SETI Alpha 5. He says, SETI Alpha 6 exploded and sent us out of course. And, you know, this turned us into a barren wasteland.
Wow, that sucked for them.
Yeah, they were such nice people, too. So then Khan inserts these like little bugs into Terrell and Chekhov's ears. And Chekhov screams.
Yes.
2 movies in a row.
Yeah. Maybe that should be the count.
Yeah. So then on Dr. Marcus's space station, Reliant calls and says they will be there in 3 days. And Dr. Marcus seems really upset. And she says, that's very irregular. It's Chekhov again. He says, these are our orders from Captain Kirk. When they hang up the call, we see inside the Reliant, and Khan is right next to Chekhov.
So they were making him make that call, say those things.
Yeah, it's kind of like a prank call.
Did you ever do that, prank call people?
I was never good at it. I was so embarrassed by doing it. So I think I'd call people and prank them, and then I'd call them back and apologize. Yeah, so.
That's funny. I'm sorry I wasted your time.
I'm sorry. I know you don't have Prince Albert in a can, and you know it's okay.
I know your refrigerator's running, but you really don't need to catch it before it gets away.
So on the Enterprise, Kirk gets a call from Dr. Marcus, and the reception's terrible. It's fuzzy transmission, as she complains about him taking Genesis away from them. And Spock turns the ship over to Kirk, saying that as a Vulcan, he has no ego to bruise, so, you know, you take control. And he says, logic clearly dictates that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And Kirk says, or the one.
Great line there, Dana. I mean, those lines were really, really good.
This is like poetry, some of this stuff.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's exactly right. I agree with you, yeah.
And Spock says, you are my superior officer. You are also my friend. I have been and always shall be yours.
Great. This whole thing was great.
Yeah, and, you know, and Kirk's like happy to take over command. I mean, that's what he really wants, but he's, you know, same time doesn't want to usurp Spock. So you see that whole friendship thing going on there.
Right.
So then we see Khan's crew on the Reliant. They're all like standing around like they're posing for an album cover. And Khan says he is tasked by Kirk and he will follow him and battle him no matter what. So we get the idea that he's not just going to let things be.
Right, he's angry.
So Kirk, Spock, and McCoy pull up all the records on Genesis. Kirk has to do like a eye scan.
Now, were those a thing, retinal scans? Were they real in 1982? I don't think so.
I don't think they were real at that time, no. They are real now. Genesis is a life form from lifelessness.
So, Dana, what would happen if they sent this Genesis to a planet that had some life on it? What would happen?
Good question, Dan. Dr. McCoy asked the same question.
Really?
And Spock answers and says it would destroy life for the new Matrix.
Oh, so it would kill life.
Yeah.
Well, if it was just a little bug, who cares?
Yeah, it's easy for you to say you're not the little bug.
That's true. Sometimes I do feel bad when I kill ants, like they're in my house, But what are you going to do? I mean, if they're swarming and stuff, you know what I mean?
It's that infestation thing we talked about last week.
But here's the thing that I do, because I feel bad about squishing them. I just take this vacuum cleaner with an extension hose and I just suck them up into the vacuum. I figure, they're still alive. They're probably still alive in there.
And now they got this great little home inside there. Yeah, I'm just going to put it in the garbage. Yeah.
Well, and then I think then it becomes this weird, dystopian ant world where they're all trying to figure out who's going to eat who or whom. Sorry, who's going to eat whom.
Oh, you can say it, but I can't. Yeah. Okay.
The one ant's going, I know there's an English professor ant here somewhere. I'm just going to eat that fuck.
I'm gonna kill him and eat him.
Oh, God. If they ever get out of that vacuum bag, I'm in trouble because they're going to come find me in the middle of the night.
You remember the movie Them?
Oh, yeah.
With the giant ants? I love that movie.
That's a good movie, yeah. Big pincers that they got. They can lift like 4,000 times their body weight or some.
Yeah, it's something ridiculous, like 100 times or 1,000 times, yeah.
Dana, actually, it's not that impressive. They can only lift 10 to 50 times their weight.
Can you lift 10 to 50 times your weight?
No. But that'd be like the equivalent of, I don't know, a 180-pound person carrying a full-grown cow.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I mean, unless the cow was in pieces and I was taking one steak at a time out of the refrigerator, then I could do it.
Yeah, maybe even like 2 steaks and...
Package of burgers?
Yeah, a package of burgers.
Sure. There we go on the food again. Roxy, hopefully you're enjoying this.
Okay. So then they get a call that the Reliant is approaching them. And we see Khan and his 80s rock band gathered around him. And why are they all blonde and 30 years younger than Khan? When most of his crew had dark hair 15 years ago.
Yeah.
On the Reliant, they report shields are not up on the Enterprise.
No, the Enterprise has no clue at this point, right?
Yeah, they're just like, why aren't they talking to us?
Right.
So Kirk finally goes to yell alert. And just when he does, the Reliant fires. And we see mayhem in engineering as the recruits run for their lives. Uhura reports the commander of the Reliant wishes to discuss the terms of their surrender. And Kirk looks shocked.
Yeah, like, my God, this has never happened before.
Then the screen comes on, and Kirk is even more shocked when he sees Khan on the screen. And so Khan's like, send over everything on the Genesis. So Kirk agrees, and Khan gives him 60 seconds. Kirk's checking like at the helm for something, and he dons his reading glasses, kind of like, and he looks around before he does, like, oh crap, everybody's going to see I'm old.
Right.
He asks Spock about the prefix code.
Wait, is that like an area code on a phone? What is this prefix code thing?
Yeah, it's a prefix.
So as long as they get that, then they can call like toll free to the Reliant. I mean, what's the point?
Exactly. There? Yeah, it's direct communication. Yeah, you don't need an operator.
Oh, so. No Uhura.
Yeah, no, so she's safe.
Wow.
So Savik's asking why they need the prefix. And Kirk says knowing the prefix will allow us to do exactly what Khan doesn't want us to do, and that's lower his shields. Khan is like, your time is up, Kirk. And then they put in the code. On the Reliant, we see the shields drop. And then Kirk orders the fire on the Reliant. And so they fire and they do damage to the Reliant. And so as the Reliant is slowly going away, everybody turns towards the turbo lift, and we see Scotty is carrying a dying crewman up to the bridge.
Why? Did he think, well, McCoy's always on the bridge, I might as well go here first?
Yeah. That's the most logical thing I've heard forever about why he did this.
And as it turns out, that guy's his nephew too, so it makes it even more like poignant, you know.
Yeah. So they move on towards the space station, Regula 1, where Dr. Marcus was, and they beam aboard the station. So Kirk, McCoy, and Savick inspect the station and find some of the crew dead.
Like in a horrific way, right? Had their throats slashed, they're hanging.
Yeah, they're hanging upside down.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it was like the most graphic I've seen in Star Trek, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. Then they also find, like, shoved inside these containers, they find Captain Terrell and Chekhov. So they see that part of the station crew beamed down into the planet. So Kirk, McCoy, Savick, and Chekhov and Terrell beam down into the planet, and they find Genesis. And it's just like this big tube.
Looks like kind of a torpedo standing on end almost.
Yeah. Just then we see that Captain Terrell is still controlled by Khan because he's holding a phaser on them.
Now, Dana, so here's just one thing. Wouldn't they have McCoy scan their brains to see if the bug thing is in there? And if it is, maybe not trust them?
So then Khan orders him to kill Kirk, but Terrell can't. And he's like almost like in tears. He's like, I can't help it. And then he's like, I'm sorry. And he turns the phaser on himself and disintegrates himself.
I thought the actor Paul Winfield did a great job in that scene.
So then Chekhov collapses with a scream, of course.
Oh, God, we got 2 screams in this movie. So we're up to 3 now, right?
3. So then we get a close-up on his ear, and we see the creature kind of crawl out of his ear.
Ugh.
And Kirk comes up and fires a phaser at it, takes off Chekhov's ear, but, it'll grow back.
How close was that to Chekhov when he shot it? Because we already know his eyesight isn't that good, right?
Futzing with his reading glasses. He's trying to get close enough so he can see it well. Meanwhile, a thing crawls into McCoy's head. And
it was gross when it came out of his ear, though.
Yeah, it was all slimy and stuff. Yeah,
there was blood coming out. Oh, it was nasty.
Well, yeah,
sure. Whenever I have a bug in my ear, that's exactly what happens. Did you ever worry though about getting a bug in your ear?
Yeah, my brother one time had a wasp fly in his ear.
Oh my God!
Strange things. But
very strange things, Dana. Yuck.
So yeah, Kirk kills the wormy thing. He grabs a communicator and says, "Khan, you bloodsucker, you have to do your own dirty work." Khan just kind of laughs and says, and beams up the Genesis. And then he says, "I've done more than kill you." He says, "I've hurt you." And Khan says he will leave Kirk stranded there. And Kirk screams, "Khan!"
It's like a classic, right?
Yeah.
And it's a meme and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, big time. Carol sends everybody away so she can talk to Kirk. We learn Kirk stayed away from Carol and David, who is his son, one of many.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
She said he was out chasing around the galaxy, and Kirk seems sad. And so then Carol Marcus shows Kirk the Genesis cave.
Wait, is that a euphemism?
So yeah, they look at this cave and they're kind of like on a ledge looking out at everything, and there's waterfall and there's, big plants and stuff.
Because this is where they did the test run of the Genesis, right?
Inside the planet.
Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
There seems to be light coming from the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Did they also create a sun?
Yeah, I thought the same thing, Dana. I don't know.
So we see Kirk eating fruit from the cave. Then Savick asks how he beat the Kobayashi Maru. And Kirk says he changed the test. And she's like, she doesn't understand. And David says he cheated. And Kirk says, I don't like to lose. Just then he opens his communicator and calls up to Spock. So they get beamed up to the Enterprise. And we can see the Reliant is on the other side of the planet from the Enterprise.
So the Enterprise is kind of hidden from the Reliant.
Yeah. Spock suggests that they head for the Mutara Nebula, where the odds will be even. Khan sees them as they come around the planet, apparently, and they go chasing after the Enterprise. And then Spock estimates penetration of the nebula in 2 minutes.
Okay, so in the last 2 movies, we've heard the word penetration twice.
One of the old writers who used it in several of the episodes,
yes,
must have come back and said, "Oh, look, they're going to penetrate the nebula." And then when somebody else went, "Hey, put that in the script." Yeah.
And he was trying to work in orifice in this one, but I don't think he could do it.
So Kirk calls to Khan and says he's laughing at the superior intellect. And again, we get another picture of all these people standing around the bridge like they're posing for a freaking album cover. Nobody's working. Khan's in the captain's chair. The one right-hand man is at the helm. Everybody else is like standing around posing. It drove me crazy watching it this time. I was just like, why don't they at least act like they're doing something with the ship? Like, because they're supposed to be superior intellect.
Right.
Some people's kids. So we learned that no one has shields, and the Enterprise comes in behind the Reliant.
Now they're in the nebula at this point, right?
Yes. And it's like a big gas cloud. You know what that's like. And,
Captain, we seem to have entered a gaseous anomaly. There are Klingons circling Uranus. That joke never gets old, Dana.
So both the Reliant fires and Enterprise fires. Enterprise is hit, and they in turn hit the Reliant. On the Enterprise, Scotty reports that he has to take the mains offline. We see him in engineering, and he looks all weak, and he says, "Captain, I gotta take the mains offline. Radiation." And he passes out. So then the Enterprise appears behind Khan, and Chekhov fires the torpedoes. All 3 torpedoes hit the Reliant. On the bridge of the Reliant, Khan appears to be the only one left alive. He's all bloody and his left arm's all twisted up. He starts readying the Genesis. And he's doing this whole self-destruct thing.
I thought it looked kind of cool. I mean, and his acting in this made it seem real to me.
And he says, "To the last, I grapple with thee." And then Spock reports an energy source on the Reliant that he's never seen before. And then David, who's on the bridge with like a sweater around his shoulders, looking like he's going to go sailing this afternoon, he sees the image and says, "It's the Genesis wave."
I mean, during a battle, Dana, you think they're going to have a civilian on the bridge?
No.
Hey, Dad, I just thought I'd go to work with Dad Day.
Can I sit on your lap while you drive the ship? Yeah.
What does this button do?
So Kirk asks for Scotty to give them warp speed, and they get no response. And then Spock gets up and leaves his station. So then we see Spock go to engineering. Spock tries to go in the reactor chamber, and McCoy stops him, saying, "No human can survive in there." McCoy turns. Spock does the Vulcan nerve pinch on him, and then does a quick mind meld, saying, "Remember."
At this point, when I first saw the movie, I was like, what's happening? I don't even understand. And it was moving so quickly. Like, I mean, the pace had picked up, the tension had picked up. It's not that I didn't notice it, but I didn't have a lot of time to think about it either.
Yeah, I think my first thought was like, don't forget me.
Yeah.
I'm basically going to die. So he takes Scotty's gloves and he goes inside the chamber, and Scotty gets up and yells, "Spock, get out of there. No." In the room, Spock goes around and like looks at a couple things, and then there's like this cylinder in the middle, and he takes the cap off of it, and then there's like gases flying out, and Spock just like sticks his hands inside as the light and steam flood his face, and he like gets his whole face down in there.
It was like a proctology exam I had once, I think.
Or they use both hands, yeah.
And there was steam coming out, Dana. It's horrible.
In the reactor room, Spock puts the cap back on the tube. On the bridge, they see the mains are back online. Kirk says, "Bless you, Scotty," and he demands warp speed. And just when Genesis blows up, they just barely escape it.
Right.
Kirk calls to engineering to thank Scotty, and McCoy says, "Jim, you better come down here."
It's a mess, Jim. We need help cleaning up.
Scotty shit his pants again, and I'm not cleaning it up this time.
Where's that guy who was cleaning the floor back at Starfleet? Where's that guy?
It's all that fucking haggis he eats.
Who's got the shop vac? Where is that thing? We need it.
So Kirk gets up and he races down to engineering, and then he sees Spock in the reactor room, and he tries to go to him, and McCoy and Scotty stop him, and Scotty says, "He's dead already." Kirk calls to Spock, and Spock stands. He was kind of like sitting the back wall.
Yeah.
And he straightens his uniform, and he approaches Kirk. He like runs into the wall, so he's obviously blind. His face is all scabbed and green and scaly looking. So he says, "Ship out of danger?" Kirk says yes, and then he says, don't grieve. The needs of the many outweigh. And Kirk responds, the needs of the few. And this time Spock adds, or the one. And there's this like image where you get like Spock's face facing one way on the glass and Kirk's face facing the other way. It's just a great moment as they're talking. You can see Kirk is like trying to get as close to the window as he can. Spock says, I have been and always will be your friend. And he holds up the Vulcan salute and then he says, live long and prosper. Then he turns and dies. Kirk just looks beaten down.
Dana, there's nothing in that scene I can make fun of. It was brilliant.
I think it's one of the best scenes in all of Star Trek.
Without a doubt.
So the next thing we see is a casket being lowered down. It's actually a photon torpedo, casing, I guess. And Kirk provides the eulogy for Spock. And Kirk says, of all the souls I've encountered, his was the most human. And then they launch Spock's casket out towards the new planet that was created by the Genesis.
Yeah.
So later on the bridge, Kirk and McCoy are kind of up near one of the railings on the bridge. And McCoy says, he's really not dead as long as we remember. And Kirk says, it's a far, far better thing I do than I have ever done before. A far better resting place that I go to than I've ever known. And Carol's there and she says, is that a poem? Kirk's like, you ever hear of literature? No wonder why I went gallivanting around the galaxy instead of staying with you.
Well, she read the Cliff Notes, Dana, just like I did.
Yeah. Kirk says, no, something Spock was trying to tell me on my birthday. By the way, you didn't get me anything for my birthday, but I've got some suggestions. It's never too late to give. And McCoy says, you okay, Jim? How do you feel? And Kirk looks towards the planet and says, young. So we go back down to the Genesis planet and we kind of go through the foliage and we see Spock's coffin amidst the growing foliage. And then we hear Spock's voice saying, space, the final frontier. And he reads what was the beginning of all the Star Trek episodes on TV. And Dan, that's how the movie ends. This podcast is being brought to you by North Shore. North Shore offers premium incontinence products that can improve your quality of life. Managing incontinence can feel like a no-win scenario. Local drugstores often have a lack of options or sizes or have cheap products that leak. North Shore is way different.
Dana, incontinence affects over 13 million people in the United States alone. I have a close friend with multiple sclerosis who uses North Shore diapers to help him lead a normal life.
North Shore products can empower you to live your life on your terms by providing maximum absorbency that allows you to be dry and confident. It allows you to be you. And Dan, our listeners can use the code KIRK at checkout to receive $10 off their next order over $50. Go to northshore.com today.
So, Dana, you have some information about some of the people involved with this film.
So yeah, Dan, I wanted to talk about, start off with Dr. Marcus, who was played by Bibi Besh. In the late 60s and early 70s, she did a couple different soap operas. Early to mid 70s, she graduated to TV movies, and she even made a few theatrical releases. And then this movie came about, and then she wasn't put into Star Trek 3. And she was really mad at the director, Nicholas Meyer. But then he made a movie called The Day After, and he put her in that film, and so they became friends again. But she had other roles in other films, like one of my favorites, Tremors, and also one of my wife's favorites. She was in Steel Magnolias. Sadly, she died at age 54 from breast cancer.
Wow, that is sad.
Dan, the director on this was Nicholas Meyer. Previous to this movie, he had adapted the screenplay for the Sherlock Holmes movie, The 7% Solution. He also had written and directed the time travel movie, Time After Time. After Wrath of Khan, he directed the made-for-TV movie I mentioned earlier, The Day After, about a nuclear holocaust.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
It was.
He would later go on to direct Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, and Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Dan, he's still alive at age 78.
Oh, he's not that old, Dana.
Yeah, I mean, he might be somebody we could talk to that would actually, be able to have a conversation with us.
Yeah, that would be great. So, Nicholas Meyer, when you hear this podcast, because I know that the people who were associated with Star Trek and are still alive do listen to it, please contact us on the Damage Him hotline so we can interview you.
Yeah, and don't dally. Make it fast.
Yeah.
You might not have that much time.
God.
And Dan, I have one final note. Khan's apparent recognition of Chekhov and his remark, "I never forget a face," was somewhat ironic since Khan debuted in Space Seed, which was the 22nd episode of the first season, and Chekhov did not make his first appearance until Star Trek's second season in Cat's Paw. It's kind of a debate a lot of people have about why would he know Chekhov. It's possible, however, that Chekhov was on the Enterprise at the time and Khan had seen him off screen. In fact, as noted in one of the special edition DVDs commentary by Walter Koenig, that he often joked at conventions and in interviews that his character had made Khan wait overly long to use a bathroom on Khan's visit to the Enterprise, and that was why Khan remembered his face so well.
That's funny. He seems like a funny guy.
Yeah, I was reading something about him recently that people said they love talking to him. He's got a great sense of humor and quick wit.
Dana, you know what would be great if we got him on the podcast for like the two of you, because I can't do it. The two of you to do like this back and forth Russian accent thing. Like I could give you guys the line. Here's the line. You read it, and then we kind of see who did it the best.
Wow, I think I know who would win that.
You would, Dana. Come on.
Put me up against James Doohan.
Yeah, but he's dead. So you definitely win that one.
Wait a minute, weren't we going to do a seance at one point?
Yeah, the seance. Oh, okay, I'll write it down. I need to get a hold of that person. Yeah.
Okay, Dan, that's all I got for special comments. Do you have any special notes you want to add about this film?
I do, Dana. A couple of things. Ricardo Montalban, who played Khan, he was in great shape and had a massive chest. Many people thought that Montalban was wearing a prosthetic, like a fake chest. Well, you had mentioned Nicholas Meyer, the director. When he first met Montalban, he also thought his chest was fake. So in his words, he copped a feel to find out if it was real. And he said it was.
That's ballsy.
Yeah, I would say. A couple other things, Dana. No visitors were allowed on the set during the filming of Spock's death to keep it secret as much as possible. And again, Nicholas Meyer, the director, remembered when they shot the scene, he looked around and he saw members of the crew, including the cinematographer, crying and did not understand why they burst into tears. It was much later he admitted that he understood the significance of that scene. I mean, that scene, Dana, was outstanding. I mean, just an amazing piece of filmmaking. And then finally, Gene Roddenberry's first proposed storyline, get this, Dana, was that the Enterprise crew was going to go back in time to make sure that the Klingons did not stop the John F. Kennedy assassination. That was the idea. So this idea was rejected because it's as stupid as shit. And Roddenberry, we're an LLC. They can't sue us. And Roddenberry was forced to step into the background as a, quote, executive consultant. And that was at the request of Paramount executives who blamed him for the relative failure of the first film due to the constant rewrites he demanded. Now, that film made money. That's why they were able to make the second film. But remember during the original series how he was always changing stuff at the last minute? Sometimes he'd be on the set changing the script. People got fed up with it. And that's all I have, Dana. So, Dana, what did you see as a theme or dilemma for this movie?
Good question, Dan.
It's a new one. We never asked this question.
There's this whole age thing throughout this movie that plays so well. And so for me, it's fighting against time. It's aging and reliving the past. We all worry about something that's going to come back to us from our past. For Kirk, it's a failed relationship and a foe that wants revenge, but it's also about aging, and trying to accept that he is getting older. And just as a side note to that, Nicholas Meyer had to really talk Shatner into accepting the fact that Kirk was older. And Shatner kept saying, no, I can play him as a 35-year-old man. And he's like, but you're not a 35-year-old man anymore. You're nearly 50.
Yeah.
And he said that he really had to fight with Shatner to convince him this was the right thing to do. And he says, once Shatner accepted it, he was great. Do you have a theme or dilemma you want to discuss, Dan?
This really ties into what you were saying, Dana, but I took it more on a personal level. Like, how do we stay relevant as we age? I mean, Kirk struggled with that in the film. And I think about that. I retired a few years ago. Am I still contributing? Does my life still mean anything? Those kinds of themes. And they were in the film. And I thought, that could be sappy, right? If you don't do it right, if you don't have the right script,
Yeah.
if you don't have the actors who can handle it. And look, we make fun of William Shatner a lot, but, he was brilliant in this, and he played it really, really well. So I kind of think about that sometimes, how do I stay relevant? And when I think too much about it, I just start drinking. So I forget that I was thinking about that. So that's what I had for Dilemmas, Dana. Let's move on to the best and worst. What do you have for a best?
Mentioned this in the themes and dilemmas, the aging of the crew. I think it worked out really well. I thought it added a new kind of flavor to the film, and I really liked the way it worked. How about you? What do you have for a best?
It happened early in the film. It was Kirk and Spock's interaction when Spock gives Kirk his birthday gift. Once again, it could have really been poorly acted, poorly written, but I think maybe for the first time, Dana, but certainly this was the best example of it, of how important this relationship was for both Kirk and Spock. How about another best part for you?
Bringing back Khan as an adversary. I remember when seeing it in the theater the first time, and I was just like, it was great. I thought he's one of my favorite villains. How about you? Do you have another best part, Dan?
I'm not exaggerating when I say this, Dana. I think Spock's death scene is one of the best death scenes, if not any scene, that I've seen in any movie ever. How about you? Another best part.
I love the scene when they override the Reliance system to drop their shields. They give a basic explanation. There's a time crunch going on. You got Savick asking questions, and the way it's all played out, and Kirk going, "Just 1 second, Khan," and then he's like, "Okay, it's coming." It's like, and then he's like, fire. What a great moment. How about you? Do you have another best part for us, Dan?
Yeah, you referenced this earlier, but at the end of the film, when Kirk, McCoy, and Carol Marcus are looking out at the Genesis planet, that dialogue was poignant. It was beautiful. Again, so well written and well delivered. I just thought it was amazing. Dana, how about a worst part for you for this film?
Khan's rock band followers who did nothing but pose. It just drove me crazy. How about you? You got another? Do you have a worst part for us?
Wouldn't Scotty have brought his nephew to sickbay and not the bridge? I think I mentioned this earlier, but still. It seemed like an odd choice. How about another worst part for you, Dana?
Khan's right-hand man couldn't act his way out of a wet paper bag. It's like they put all the money into the Enterprise crew and special effects. And then when it came to Khan's, people are like, oh yeah, some of these guys were actually Chippendale dancers. Dan, you got another worst part for us?
Remember the guy cleaning the floor near the beginning of the movie? Okay. Look, he's not listed in the credits, Dana.
Oh, those bastards.
I know. I mean, this guy's a hero for cleaning the floor at any Federation facility, as far as I'm concerned. But look, if you're the actor who played this guy, and you're listening to this podcast, and you can prove you're the actor. I mean, you got to prove it somehow. Get in touch with us. We would love to have you on the podcast. I think we'd devote an entire episode, don't you think?
Oh, easily. Yeah. Maybe a two-parter.
Maybe it could be a two-part. Dana, how about one more worst part for you?
Kirk's son. Physically a good choice. Broad shoulders, kind of the curly hair, blonde hair. So you could see kind of the mix between Carol Marcus and Kirk. But again, he couldn't act. At times seemed out of place. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't as bad as Khan's right-hand man, but he was just a little wooden and not that great.
So, Dana, what do you have for this day in history?
Dan, this film made its theatrical release on June 4th, 1982. The number one song in the U.S. was Ebony and Ivory by Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder. And in the UK, it's House of Fun by Madness.
Oh, yeah, I liked Madness, yeah.
Thought this would be interesting. Top movies the weekend of June 4th. The number one was Wrath of Khan.
Nice.
Number two, Rocky 3. And the third spot was Poltergeist. Number 4 was Hanky Panky. And then 5 was Visiting Hours. And I threw in this last one, Dan, at number 6 was the summer movie Porky's. Also on June 6th, the Lebanon-Israeli war broke out. E.T., the Extraterrestrial, is released. And this would become the biggest box office hit for the next 11 years.
Wow.
That's all I got for on that date in history. Not a lot going on.
Well, Dana, why don't you give me your overall opinion of this film?
Dan, this movie is everything a Star Trek movie should be. It has a compelling story. There's good action. The special effects overall were really good. And there's a villain that's equal to Kirk and company. Just one of the best villains there was. They have the new red uniforms, which I like those uniforms. And I like that things aren't perfect on the ship. Kirk's struggle with growing older, I've already mentioned this, and the pain of past relationships catching up with him. And I especially like Spock's death scene, as you mentioned, where at one point I said, we can see the images of both Kirk and Spock on the glass, and their images kind of join to suggest just how close they are to each other emotionally. I thought that was really brilliant filmmaking. And one of the guys in the cast says, this movie should have been nominated for an Academy Award. I think the director should have gotten an Academy Award nomination.
Yeah, I think the picture should have too, Dana. I agree.
So, Dan, do you got any final comments you want to make about this film?
Dana, I can sum it up, I think, in just a few words. It was brilliant. I just think it was a great movie from beginning to end. It really should have been nominated for an Academy Award. Well, Dana, once again, had a great time talking about this film. I love this movie. You seem to feel the same. I just think it was a lot of fun talking about a film that was really, really good. Well, Dana, what do we got coming up next week?
It's a surprise, Dan. Star Trek 3.
No.
The Search for Spock.
All right, great, Dana. Once again, had a great time. Hey, enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you next week.
Once again, thanks to all our listeners for writing in and listening. Until we meet again, live long and prosper.
Thanks once again for listening to Damn It Jim, the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email at damnitjimpodcast@gmail.com or join the discussion on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or X. You can also call the Damn It Jim hotline at 509-676-6298. Enjoy the rest of your week, and as always, remember to live long and prosper. This has been a Ramble Jar production.